Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show. Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James and today I'm not with Joe. It's just me by myself today, but we have a very special guest for what I hope is going to be a very enlightening topic that we're going to be covering today. So I'm joined by Finn Patrick, the Marketing Director of iIntro. Good afternoon, Finn. Thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon, James. Great to be here. I had on the tip of my tongue, good evening, Wembley, but sorry, I forgot where we were. So,
well, there we go. We'll maybe get to Wembley one day, Finn, but we're going to need a few more viewers for that one. But there we go. So, Finn, we've got a really exciting topic today, and it's one that we've had a lot of interest in from people on LinkedIn and through our other various marketing channels. That I know that recruiters out there worldwide are always keen to find out more information. So, why don't you share with us what you're going to be covering today?
Yeah. So, and I can speak, from my own experiences. Marketing within recruitment is one of the most challenging industries to market in. So, we're going to be looking at contingency versus retained marketing. That really the difference in terms of what you need to do in order to really kind of stand out in the right way. We're going to go over my kind of three styles of marketing that really work within recruitment. Specifically if you are a retained or exclusive contingent recruiter. And then we're going to look into AI a little bit. There's a lot of buzz around AI tools at the moment and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to give you my kind of insight on how best to utilize them and get the best results.
Yeah, absolutely. So three fascinating topics that we'll be covering. So, yeah, the main thing is obviously the name of our show is the Retained Recruiter Show, and that obviously is a lot of our focus on helping organizations make the transition from the transactional world of CV recruitment, basically, or CV-based recruitment, to more of a consultative model where you're actually delivering a fully retained service. So, why don't you give us your definition of what the difference is as you see them in that first section about contingency marketing?
Yeah, sure. So I think what's easiest to do is to really think of the way in which contingency work exists in terms of there's a high volume of CVs that really kind of go out back and forth as part of that process and so forth. The spray and pray type, if you like. All right. Now that's very similar to marketing and so forth. So what we're really going to talk about in terms of how to transition from that more spray and pray approach. Perhaps you've done it with marketing before. You've thrown spaghetti at the wall and things don't stick, or if something does stick, you don't know what, so you just continue to do the same thing, and then priorities take place and you deprioritize your marketing and so forth. So really to kind of step into retained marketing and so forth is very similar to the way in which it operates in terms of you're focusing on fewer things but higher quality. All right, so you're really kind of looking at creating more of a continual message throughout the content that you send out. You get a lot of kind of programs and so forth around marketing, and the kind of line is that if you keep producing content, then that will kind of that will what's the word? That will trigger the algorithm, right? And you'll show up all over the place and that kind of thing, right?
Is that not true?
Well, this is the thing: is that so see if it is true. Like so let's pretend that it is completely 100% true at the moment, right? If you're showing up everywhere, what inevitably happens when you're putting out a high volume of anything is the quality is going to go down considerably, because nobody can produce high quality content 24 hours a day unless that's their core business, right? But we're in the business of recruitment, right? So the people who do really well with content marketing and producing high volumes are typically content marketing style businesses and so forth, in terms of that is their business, right?
Yeah.
Shock horror, right? The challenge really for recruitment firms is to really identify, what's practical, what's realistic in terms of how much time can you give this, along with the sales aspect of the business, the operational aspect of the business, the communication element of the business in terms of internally, if you're working with teams, or externally, if you're kind of interacting with clients and candidates and so forth. There's so much, there's so many kind of different things going on mechanically within a recruitment business that it's just not realistic to be marketing all the time, even if you've got a dedicated marketer within the business. Right. And let's face it, most recruitment firms don't have a dedicated marketing department where there's more than one person um, who can specialize, or with different specialists in different areas and so forth. Even if they did, it's still really difficult to come up with high quality content all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's like a round of golf. You don't hit a hole in one every single time, right? But if you kind of slow down a little bit and you listen to feedback, um, base it on actual conversations you're having with clients and candidates and so forth, it's much easier to create a more um, impactful message, go deeper on the specific elements and insights into what working with you looks like. And that in itself produces a much better experience for any outsiders who are coming across your business for the first time, right? So, really, we've got to look at marketing as, are you creating expensive noise, right? Because marketing, typically there's going to be a price tag on that, whether it's money to pay somebody else to do it for you, or the time that you put into doing it yourself. So expensive noise is not productive, right? What we really want to do is to focus on signal, right? And in order to do that, we need to be really specific. We need to create content that's going to be impactful and inspiring as well. So it's going to inspire people to take action, who are going to want to, continue their journey with you being part of that as well. So I know there's a lot of things kind of thrown in there, but I'm just curious to find out, James, if you've got anything to add to that. I'm interviewing you
Well,
now.
yeah, no, I think one of the interesting things when we look at the differences between businesses which market contingency is that that shotgun effect. It is really spraying it out to a fairly large audience, and we get it, why? Because when you're working on contingency, you're working on many more vacancies than a retained recruiter. Your processes are very different because your marketing has to cover both client attraction and candidate attraction, and I'm not saying there's anything bad about that. But you are really hoping. So there's a lot of contingent recruiters out there who take that hopium drug, in
Mhm.
terms of hoping that they're going to actually land a big fish by sort of doing marketing. And I think there's a lot of a misunderstanding about what marketing means for people in terms of going out there trying to sort of find clients, and there's very little differentiation that takes place from recruiter to recruiter, which is the big challenge. Because when you're in the contingent marketplace, the prerequisites are you've got a good network, you can deliver really quickly, and I'm going to be kind and say cost effective. So I think you're trying to deliver on all of those particular angles, and what's your marketing going to say? What is it that makes you different? Because when you're working on a contingent model, the reality is your model is based on CV identification. Your
Mhm.
role is to go out there and as quickly as possible find great CVs, and yes, recruiters are good at finding great CVs. We all get very excited about that. But what are the benefits to the end client, the employer, who's reading your marketing, and what is it that is going to make them say, you know what, I really need to speak to that company?
Mhm.
So it's going back to your point that you made right at the outset there. How do you create continuous high level content that's going to sort of impact on what it is you do? So I actually think although a lot of people talk about wanting to do marketing, I don't think a lot of people really understand how to market in that sector and how to differentiate themselves. And so,
Mhm.
what I'm really hoping that you're going to be able to share are some of your thoughts and ideas on health. And because I know, Finn, one of the things that obviously we know each other, so over the last five or more years, you've as part of your coaching that you provide to recruitment businesses, both through Intro and in a previous life, of course, means that you've seen a lot of these people who are, I say, coming along hoping that they're going to find the right solution. So I'm interested in sort of, you sharing those thoughts with people so that they can take something away from today, that they can perhaps consider using in their business, because
Yeah.
I think that's really going to help them. So why don't we sort of crack on with that?
Yeah. So I think first of all, it's useful to clarify what expectation to have of marketing, right? So
Yeah.
in the industry of marketing itself, where you see different marketing programs or products, services, solutions, and that kind of thing, very much they're selling that shiny object or that magic wand, if you like. Now, we'd all love that magic wand. People like to think of me as some kind of magician in terms of I can turn anything into money overnight. And I can tell you that I've never been able to do that ever, right? But there are some strategic steps that you can take in order to get to that desired goal. One thing I'd like to share, because you can tap into it before, James, is first of all, let's define what marketing really is, and how best to kind of think about it. And this is, part of what we kind of do with the training at iIntro as well. There's marketing workshops that I host and so forth. But one of the kind of primary points in terms of simplifying the marketing element is to think about it in terms. So you mentioned, it depends how good your network is, and essentially within that network, you're going to tap into that network and speak to people, and some will eventually become clients. All right. Now, you can sell to people within that network, and typically what happens is that you've covered the marketing element of it within that conversation, right? So I like to think of marketing and sales as one long conversation, but typically there's the first half or even 60-70% of the conversation that you can have on a one-to-many basis, because you find that through having these individual conversations, you're just saying the same thing, right? Now, what marketing is geared to do is to have that one-to-many conversation covering the same points you would within a one-to-one scenario on a network basis, right?
Yeah.
But you can also scale that in terms of your network, through the likes of social media and so forth. You can increase your reach. So it's not just using your email database or your phone and that kind of thing. There are people online actively using the platform and looking for solutions just like yours. So there's kind of like a twofold element of what you can do in terms of objectives. And I think it's really important to have realistic objectives as well. The first objectives really is to reach more people, because you're going to be confined by how many people are in your network anyway. Really, that's why people start marketing, because they've exhausted their network, right? The second part is to have that one-to-many approach in terms of you can really qualify people, or they'll disqualify themselves and so forth. And the people who like your message, like the way in which you give them certain insights into what working with you looks like, because that's the question everybody asks: what does working with you look like, right? Now, if you can answer that at the beginning of the conversation, you're going to remove that resistance and so forth. So it's going to make selling much easier. And just in a nutshell, I find that approach is much more effective than the old throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. I think, Finn, what we want to do is help people sort of go through that journey. And as you see on the screen there, if people want to download our battle-tested plan, go to www.retainedroadmap.com and download our plan free of charge, and have a look at that and see whether some of the things that we're talking about today are areas that we can help you on here at iIntro. So yeah, Finn, continuing. So let's talk about some helpful guidance points for people.
Yeah, and just to add to that, James, on the Retained Roadmap, you'll also get a breakdown of what's covered in the training, the marketing training specifically as well. So have a look at that, and happy to answer any questions that might come through on LinkedIn just now as well, because this is a live broadcast. And if you are catching the replay, write your questions in as well. We do have a look and see what people are asking about and so forth, and we'll make sure that they're covered. So I'd like to kind of move into, so there's essentially three styles of marketing that I find really work. So instead of the kind of scattered approach and so forth in terms of let's do lots of different things and see what works, right? As I find that, focus is really kind of powerful. The deeper you can go and do, the fewer things really, really well, the more effective it's going to be overall. And now I work with kind of marketing managers on a weekly basis and so forth. And, the kind of firsthand feedback that I get from them is it's much easier to, do 3 things really well than 10, right? And often that's the case, is the demand on them is to produce lots of content because they think that the quantity is going to create the results that they're looking for, right? But I would implore people to focus on these 3 things. So the first one, and I've done a bit of prep, obviously, because I don't remember this. But the first and the most important thing is authority marketing, right? So essentially, if you are positioning yourself as a premium provider, so if you're working as a retained recruiter, or you offer retained search and so forth, or exclusive contingent and so forth, you really want to position yourself as somebody that people will go to, essentially. So the kind of metaphor that I like to use, the kind of doctor versus the waiter or waitress type scenario. So you have the order taker, which is typically what happens within contingency recruitment, right? The employer places their order with one or multiple recruitment firms, and they all kind of fight over fulfilling that job order, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to working exclusively with companies and so forth, right, there needs to be an element of trust that you're the best person and the only person who's going to be able to deliver on what it is that they're looking for, right? So by positioning yourself as the doctor, there's a few things that you have to do, right? So the first thing is in order to kind of gain that authority and so forth, is stop chasing, right? So that's a really, really kind of important one, right? It's almost like dating, right? Nobody likes somebody who like chases them up and follows them on every platform and that kind of thing. It's just a bit creepy, right? So when it comes to when you stop chasing and so forth, we need to now think about, well, what are things that are going to help magnetize the right people towards us and so forth, right? And that's in the kind of content that I'm talking about, in terms of if you can go deeper on the kind of challenges that your clients face and give them a really, really simplistic overview as to how you overcome those challenges, then that's a great insight into what working with you looks like. All right. So there might be, say, 3 steps to your process. There might be 5 steps. There might be 7 steps. There might be more steps than that. There might be 1 step. Give them a step-by-step account in terms of what transformations occur at these elements and or these stages. And what's the alternative? Like, what do they typically have to do, right? Now, one thing that I think's personally great about the iIntro platform, that's not spoken about very often, is the ability to organize appointments through the platform itself. So it actually matches appointments to when candidates are available and when clients are available and so forth, and employers are available, right? It takes everything out of email and so forth, and stops the back and forth, and I think that's like in itself a really, really useful and important component in terms of increasing efficiency, which in turn increases productivity and that kind of thing, right? But see if you focus on features, not just the benefits, but the actual features of how you do what you do, because that's essentially your differentiator, right? And that's going to, focusing on the differentiation that you have over other contingent recruiters, or perhaps more general recruiters that operate within different niches, markets, etc. If you specialize in one industry, talk about industry trends, where you can see the industry going, how you can see the challenges evolving, and that kind of thing. Really being a thought leader within your market and so forth. So that's the kind of first point, the authority marketing side of things.
I think Finn, the authority side, it won't be the first time that necessarily that people have heard this interest, but I think it's all about sort of making sure that you are positioning yourself. And I think the piece you said there towards the end, which is show the client how interested you are and how interesting you are, because you understand the marketplace in which you operate. Because then they know they're actually dealing with people who get it. And listen, I go back to my very early days in recruitment. You're trying to catch up on acronyms in terms of what things meant, so you could actually say something and sounded like you actually knew what you were talking about. But the client saw straight through you because there was nothing else behind it. It was in the early days, you're pretty much an empty vessel. But as you gained that experience, as you've sort of focused in on your market, then you can share that because you attend industry events. You're visible, you're seen. So people like to deal with people who know a lot more about them. And I think that positioning about your authority, and therefore it becomes easier to create content or share messages. And I remember one of those little tips that people could do on LinkedIn is, it's great to share with your network. And I don't mean spraying it out, but actually picking off key contacts and saying, saw this article today, thought it might be of interest to you. And even if they've already had it, you've just positioned yourself as somebody who's thoughtful, but also, is actually in touch with the industry and the sector. So that's really important. And just a quick shout out to Phil Duggan. He said, absolutely double down on the things that we do best. Rather than trying to sort of spread yourself thin when you talk about 3 things versus 10. So thanks for your comment, Phil.
Yeah,
So Finn, onto the second important component.
Yeah, so the second one kind of is a carry-on, or a continuation of authority, and that is more advertorial style marketing and so forth. So advertorial is typically a kind of objective style of marketing, where it's the journalistic approach, in terms of, imagine somebody's writing about your business and so forth, but there's a call to action to your business. Now, there's a way in which you can do this for yourself without hiring PR or being a journalist yourself, and that is to actually have video interviews with key players within the industry, because they offer a very objective overview of kind of like-minded things that you focus on. So pick people with the same values as you, and that kind of thing. Now, inherently, what happens as part of that is that you gain some exposure to their audience, but also some more authority, like that lifts you up as well, just through that kind of reference and so forth. So that's the second step, which is really easy to do. And what you can later do is chop that up into different content, whether it's video snippets or written content and that kind of thing. And you kind of end up with that really objective, almost like a, the best brand message is what other people say about you, as opposed to what you say about yourself and so forth. So that is really key and crucial in terms of accelerating your authority fast, right? And then I'd like to move on to the third one, because I think it's often the most overlooked one, right? And that's asset marketing. So who are your assets, right? And your assets are the people that it's not something out there. We often externalize where the gold is, right? But the assets we really have are the employers that we've worked with before. Now it's 5 times more likely that somebody will buy from you again than somebody buying with you for the first time, right? So nurture those relationships, and it doesn't have to be mass messaging and so forth, because you're going to have a smaller network of people that you've worked with before. Make it even one-to-one messages and so forth. Make sure that you follow up and do it in a really relevant way, right? But then the other most overlooked one is the candidates themselves, right? So if you're putting together quality shortlists and so forth and providing that to employers, then not everybody can get the job, right? So what happens to the other candidates that perhaps didn't succeed that time round? Well, often it's the case, recruiters will disengage with those candidates and they'll move on to the next job, right? How about, saying we've got, we're in conversation with these people at the moment and promoting them out to the market. It's like, that is a really, really simple thing to do. But we're often kind of chasing after the next job or the next money, and or the next money the next check that could come in, right? But actually marketing those candidates. And I'd like to talk a little bit about a new tool that we've been developing through iIntro and so forth, which is called Talent Alert Pro. And James, you are like one of the the best kind of candidate marketing kind of people out
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I think what we wanted to do, Finn, because when people listening and say, well, candidate marketing, hang on, I've been doing e-shots for years. And I think the reality is, we live in the 21st century, and e-shots of candidates, anonymized, short introductory profiles, just isn't really differentiating you in the market nowadays. So I think the development of Talent Alert Pro, and obviously people can see there's a website address there. Go take a look at it. It's about aiding your business development by promoting your assets, the candidates that you have there. Now you've got to be, you've got to allocate some time to this and put some effort into it. But when you have those great candidates who, want to work with you because they value what you've done, they can see your authority in the market. By the way, candidates are clients in disguise. So again, the work you're going to do with these people, even you're not going to place all of them, of course, but actually, if you show them some, TLC, and actually look after them and promote them to your network, also in conjunction with the candidate, their network, but obviously you can do it in a more professional way. What we've done is develop a process and a system that will make you stand out from the crowd. And one of the things about marketing is making sure it's not just expensive noise. You've got to be out there. What do you call it? Noise versus signal. You actually got to signify to the people you're saying, I've got something very special here, and I'm elevating myself over and above the competition. And so Talent Alert Pro is one of those tools that we've developed to help recruiters work in a different way, rather than just sending out something that's bland and boring or even flat and dull. That sits in an email or a website or wherever it happens to be. So I'd urge you to have a quick look at that one. If you like it, just have a look and get in contact with us, of course. Going through from those other things, you can make an appointment or just fill in a contact form.
And you tapped into something really important there as well, James, is that
nice pun.
There's absolutely. We refer to Talent Alert Pro as tap internally, because it helps you kind of tap into the market, so to speak. But a really important thing is that a lot of what we do within any industry isn't completely new, if that makes sense, right? In terms of the kind of marketing that I've spoken about today, it's not 100% new and so forth, right? But the way in which you do it is going to impact how successful you're going to be with it as well, right? So like James was saying there is a key differentiator in terms of it's a really slick platform in terms of you can easily advertise on LinkedIn. It will anonymize the candidates that you're putting out there. So if they're in jobs and so forth, they don't have to fear being discovered by their own employer that they're actively seeking for new positions and that kind of thing. So it's a kind of, because it's been built, by recruiters for recruiters specifically, it's like we understand the pitfalls of candidate marketing itself. So we've actually created something which isn't really kind of available on the market. And, I definitely kind of recommend a look at it, because it's really, really simple to put a campaign together. And one of our clients, incidentally, won I think it was an 18K job just through using that tool and going to market and being top of mind and so forth. So it can be very easy to get, that extra job in towards the end of the month to bump your revenue up.
Good point. I think actually just a nice little segue to our final piece over the next 5 minutes or so. Talent Alert Pro, it utilizes some artificial intelligence to help anonymize that profile of that particular candidate. So that buzzword artificial intelligence, Finn, why don't we cover the last section of your things that I talk about today?
So the next magic wand that appeared was artificial intelligence, right? It's like now we've got the likes of ChatGPT and so forth. We're now, guru marketers that are going to be able to write, like David Ogilvy and that kind of thing, and produce millions as a result. Did that happen? No, it didn't. So I'd like to share with you like how I like to use AI just to kind of speed up my workflow and so forth. So there's a kind of old tip within copywriting in terms of, to write drunk and edit sober, right? I like to use AI when it comes to generating ideas and so forth about a specific topic. But the important thing is that you don't just hit copy and paste as soon as it generates something, right? Is to work through and actually put it within your own language, be more specific, and chop out the things that don't really have to be there and so forth, trim the fat, so to speak, right? The great thing about doing it this way is that, so rather than, going out, getting drunk and writing and so forth, is it'll save you the bar tab and it'll save you the raging hangover as well, right? So it'll boost your productivity tenfold. So really looking at AI as a research tool, right? And that's the kind of fundamental thing. So when it comes to copywriting, so kind of first and foremost, my kind of main specialism is copywriting, right? The research phase typically takes about 80 to 90% of that task and so forth. So that process is typically 80 to 90% of the time it actually takes to produce anything worth looking at, right? The kind of rewrites and so forth, that's going to be 10, 20%. And so when you're able to use AI effectively, I'm a good finisher as opposed to starter, and with a very kind of engineer like mind and so forth. So if I've got lots of things there, I like to pick and choose what I like. But rather than having writer's block, right, which I occasionally get if I'm not in the zone of copywriting, I might be working with a team that day or many people and so forth. It requires a certain gear within my brain in order to produce effective copy, right? So really, I just see that as a kind of shortcut to productivity, right? It's not a shortcut to results, but a shortcut to research, a shortcut to productivity. So hopefully that's going to be useful for the people watching or perhaps listening.
Are there any tips that you've got in terms of producing high converting content? I mean, is there any piece of advice you can give people? Because I was going to go to ChatGPT and say, write me a 500-word blog on whatever your industry specialism is, or whatever. You've got any tips that might help? And I don't mean a cheat sheet. I mean, there are plenty of those out there, aren't there?
Absolutely. You're looking for that one word to put in that's going to turn into gold, aren't you? No, I'm joking. Because it doesn't exist, unfortunately. The most important thing is, and I like to use this as a prompt, is to say include, right? So there's maybe things that I have in mind already, and they're usually going to be measurable outcomes and so forth. So measurable things about perhaps the result that you've generated with a client, for example, or a benefit to your client. So it might be, you can save 50% of the time on the interviewing process, for example, right? Or it might be that you can have a 96% retention rate through using a platform like iIntro to deliver your candidates and so forth, right? So I like to say within, after I've written, write my 500-word blog or whatever it is, I like to just simply say include and put in some measurable outcomes and so forth in there. And what it does is it will create something that's much more specific to the points that you're making within those bullet points and so forth. So even if you can bullet point, and that's a great thing as well, even if you have an initial kind of session internally or perhaps with a client and so forth, and you just bullet point it simply by saying include and including your bullet points within that, it will come up with something that's much more relevant to what it is that you're trying to say. And again, even with that kind of prompt, you want to go back and you want to edit that, right? You want to perhaps improve upon it or use your words, not theirs.
But also, you're making it less likely to sound like everybody else's by I don't mean I don't mean just the editing at the end. That's really important as well. But actually, because you've given a different command and actually made it more specific, and it's meaningful rather than just one of those wandering generalities about nothingness that sometimes pop out there. That's actually going to sort of help that come through, isn't it?
I think it's important as well, James, is to think about AI like you're managing somebody on a team, for example, right? So if you were to say to them, write a 500-word blog about this, you're leaving, there's lots of variables there, right? So what comes back might not be something to your liking and so forth. So if you think about it in terms of how you deliver that directive, for example, then you're going to get much better results. So I see it very similar to managing people. It's just with AI and so forth, there's far more resources that it can tap into and so forth. I just said tap again. That's another.
I've got a little anecdote just to leave people with before I summarise up. And thank you very much for listening today. If you do want to watch this again, you can catch us on YouTube. These sessions are all recorded. But a little anecdote in terms of what you're sort of saying there. A lot of people have already experienced with ChatGPT is asking it to rewrite what's already come up there. And so that's probably going to show my age, but the Secretary of State over in America was once a guy called Henry Kissinger. And one of his aides on his staff, he'd asked him to write some report. So the report was placed on his desk for him to read, and it was then sent back the next day to the aide saying, needs to be better. So the aide rewrote it and then put it back on the desk later that evening for Henry Kissinger to read. Came back the next morning and said, no, still not good enough. And then the aide rewrote it the third time and added a little note to say, I really can't get it any better than this. And the note that came back says, well, I'll read it now then. Sort of ChatGPT, asking it to rewrite until you've got something that you're really happy with. Don't just accept the first thing that comes out of ChatGPT. So that's what you need to do on that side of thing. Listen, Finn, we've had it's been a really sort of interesting conversation today. Just to give people a quick summary for people listening back. And Emma, thanks for your comments. So hopefully we'll get the chance to watch this again. But marketing retained recruitment is very different to contingent recruitment because you can start to differentiate your service, increasing and sharing with the client what your value proposition is. And I'm not meaning the cliche of value, really showing the client what makes you stand out from every other recruiter in your marketplace. Finn then spoke a little bit about the 3 marketing styles, and we abbreviated them, almost a little bit of alliteration with the 3 A's, the authority marketing, the advertorial, and the assets. So using all of those in combination to give yourself that positioning in the marketplace. And then really looking to find some efficiencies in the marketplace by utilizing artificial intelligence to sort of create content that's going to stand out from the crowd and really position you. Finn, have I missed anything there that's really important for people to catch up on, or anything to add?
No. And to be clear, these are the things that I think is best for recruitment firms themselves and so forth. For marketers, it's a great starting point. But if you're interested in finding out more, do download our blueprint and so forth at Retained Roadmap. And speak to one of our team today, and they can talk to you a little bit more about the training that we do at iIntro and so forth. That really kind of helps you focus in and dial in your marketing.
Yeah, and as part of the training, Finn, obviously we include, there's a series of workshops which you run. It's not just a workshop; it's a series of workshops where we help people go through these and really break it down into detail. So listen, Finn, thanks very much for all your input and effort on that one. It's been great to have you with us today. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Please do keep an eye out if it's the first time you've ever watched one of our programs, so to speak. Please do come back and watch some more, or go back on YouTube, find some really interesting ones. We've had some great guests in the past, like today, and we'll have some great guests in the future. Listen, that's all from me, Finn. So thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, James.
Yep, thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Cheers, everybody.